This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, very good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So, last session, we were trying to talk about the pod related configurations, right? Declaring the pod and all. And so we talked about certain options over here, right? And at the ending, we're just trying to talk about environment variables, and we just close there. And so extending to that, we're just going to talk about variables. But before to that, I want to talk about in resources. I missed one piece, which is limit ranges, basically. Okay, so that means if you don't give any resource, also you want to assign automatically some resource. Now, let's say if you don't, I forget, I don't give any resource to the pod. I launched a container into the cluster. Now, let's say so my pod will have my pod is actually launching a container, and container will have the so no boundaries now, and it will go and consume a lot of resources if it is if it is um, if it is if it is doing something mischievous thing, or it has some bug or something like that. So it just goes and consumes. By default, container consume all the resources, right? So where you need some threshold, so that's where you're actually putting the resources something, and you're actually telling this is what I want, okay? And so that you'll have some capacity planning as well. Okay, so total cluster, we need this particular capacity also. We'll have some understanding. But let's say if you're not using that, and you're just launching the pod, so sometimes if the pod is having some issue, then it will go and tamper the remaining resources. Okay, so just to avoid that, what we can do is if you forget to, or if any user forget to give the resources, and we can give the default resources. Okay, and how do you do that? So that is where quotas I mentioned here. Fine, yeah. So there is something called as limit ranges. Limit range Kubernetes. Okay, so if you go for limit range Kubernetes, then what you would be doing is you would be enabling the default configuration. So probably this one. Yeah. So this is how you're going to keep saying that, okay, I want this is the default CPU, I want to put it. Okay, and at the same time, you can also say that I want this default memory also. Okay, default CPU and default memory. So which you see over here is a create a limit range for the pod, and this is basically for memory. Okay, now irrespective of whatever the pod I create, if I don't have any resource, these are the resources which will be applicable. Okay, let's go and give a try. So pod. Default resources. So it's called as limit range, basically. And here it is. Okay, and minute. Yeah, so you have one so this one created. So now let's go and try to now create one simple container so that it is just Nginx, nothing more than that, and the name is coming as a default memory demo or something like that. Okay, so or you can also give a CPU here. So CPU is default is limits is 1, and default so CPU is 0.5. Okay, so this is how you are going to have, and now let's try to run this. And let's go to the Linux box. Here is my Linux box. I need to install my K9s. At this point of time, K9s is not needed. So kubectl, first I have to clone the repository, dev.azure.com. Yeah. So if I go for pods, developers, kubectl, apply -f 09, this one, and the kubectl gets the pods. Now the container is getting created. Okay, let it get created. So we didn't give any resources. Now let's go and see that how much resource it is actually holding. All right. So it came to running now. As it came to running, now you can go for kubectl and describe kubectl describe a pod. And if you do enter, describe pod is actually going to show you some information around this. Okay, so now you can see this. This is the resources. The limits it is telling you got is 1 and 512, and whereas the request which you are giving is 500 millicore and 256 megabytes. See this 256 and 0.5 is nothing but 500 millicore. Okay, so this is nothing but 1 and 512 and 512. I didn't give any resources. Each and every pod will try to get this. Okay, so this is one thing I missed on the other day on the resources. And there is something called as quotas. Okay, so quotas, we have a topic there. We'll just go with that. So clear? Any questions on this? Okay, all right. So now let's go with, there is one pending topic. Okay, port exposing, right? Networking will take care. All right. So the next thing is basically some pod environment variables. So we already deal with that. Now, how do you give some data to that particular variable? You already give to that. Now, so sometimes you'll be having huge number of variables. Okay, and those particular huge number of variables you want to access across the pods. Okay, not only a single pod. Okay, and I want to access it across the multiple pods, and that's where so something called as so something called as config map, and using the help of config map we can make our life easy. And if the data is actually going to all right, yeah, sorry. So let me write a problem statement first of all. So 10.yml, and here you're going to get some problem statement. The problem statement is, so the two pods I want to give some same kind of data. So first of all, I'm going to write one pod, and I'm going to write some data. For that I require an image, just to show you like a lot of variables, nothing more than that. CD images. CD images ls and CD config map. Just to demonstrate this, I made one Docker file. So this has nothing, so it runs a simple web server, but I just, so requires a lot of variables here. It just requires a lot of variables. If any variable is missing, so we will Okay, so we'll get into the issues. Okay, it will fail basically. The variable is not there and it will fail. And there are a lot of variables. It expects all these variables. Okay, now I'll go and do sudo docker login. So sudo docker build K06 config map v1.
Hey Raghu, what is the role of this config map here?
So you'll see that practically we'll get there rather than actually explaining first. I just want to put through some example. So I'm trying to derive some situation. Right. Yes, Dama.
So if we build the images like locally in our machine, can't we run directly from the local repository? We have to push it to the remote and then only we'll be able to run?
Yeah, so wherever you keep it, so Kubernetes should have access, right?
No, not Kubernetes, like I'm asking in general in Docker itself. Because I tried in my local machine, like I built a image in my local machine. It was there in my, like when I checked Docker images, that particular image was available. But when I tried to run it, I was not able to.
So
Then I pushed to
unless you're
the
making something wrong, it will work, right? So we did that particular approach in the Docker. All the time I was using local images only. All the images I didn't push actually, right? So unless you miss something or you're making some mistake, it should work. No issues.
Okay, fine. Then I'll check it.
Yeah.
Raghu, even for me, when I try to pull from local to Kubernetes, it's not working, Raghu.
It will not work, right?
In Docker, it
So
is, yeah. In
Docker is
Docker,
your
it
local.
works fine.
So you're telling me you're having your salary slip in your system now. I can access it. Can I access it? You have a
We
salary
can't
statement right now. I cannot write. In your system, you have some salary slip or some personal document you have or something you have, right? So can I access it from here
Okay.
right now? I cannot, right? So that's your local. So locally you can access it. Okay. But let's say we want to come into some contract saying that, okay, so I put here, you take it here. Like let's say you put it in Google Drive or somewhere. Okay, we commit into a contract and so say that, okay, so I put here, you take from here. Okay, so that's a registry, right? So yeah.
Okay. So for this one, so I have to push that Docker image to repository, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Raghu.
Or if you want to keep it local, you have to go to the Kubernetes node and you have to, keep it available everywhere. So that is fundamentally not a good idea. Right? It's not a, ideal use case. That should not
Yeah,
be the right
actually,
approach.
yeah, I created that image in a Kubernetes node itself, but when I try to run the deployment, it is it's giving image pullback error.
Yeah. So unless you're making some mistake, the other day we also faced that issue. What is I'm developing. I'm making the images locally, and since I'm making it locally, it is never pushing my central changes. Okay, so we tried that. It's picking up, no issue actually, but unless you're making some mistake there.
Okay,
Just
Raghu,
to
yeah,
cross
we'll
check
check
one.
that one.
Yeah. So now we have an image, and this image can cause some problems. Okay, so let's look into those problems. Now, all I want to do is just want to write some pod. Okay, nothing more than that. So simple as one pod. But the image is, I would like to put this, and so let's say this as let's say pod 1, okay, and this has HTTP. I'm running HTTP. I'll just keep HTTP. Okay, that's it. Okay, nothing more than that. I make this particular image. Okay, I'm running one pod. I'm making this image, and at the same time, I want to run another pod also with the same image, and I'm going to put it as pod 2. There's nothing wrong, right? I'm running 2 times. Okay. Now, but this actually, if I try to run it, it's gonna be a failure. Okay. So why it goes into failure? Let's take a look there. So we just made this, and I'll go to now cd kubectl, sorry, cube space pull kubectl apply -f, and so 10.yml. So 2 pods are created, but okay, let's install K9s. I got used to that, right? So let's install K9s. I can go for Linux automation tools. Okay. So here there are 2 pods actually, which is going into error, and the other pod is actually going to pending. Why? Because you configured a limit range, right? That limit range is causing the issue. Why? Because you're hardly having a simple server, and you almost keep 500 MB of RAM and all. It's actually failing it up. Okay, let me delete these all. Okay. So now the containers are getting created. So both those goes into error. Why it's going into error? So I want to look into the logs, right? So there is one command here. So kubectl, you don't know the issue, kubectl, okay, logs, and you hit enter. So now it is telling variable is missing app name. Okay, so I have to push the app name, which is variable. So which is going to be env, name is app name is missing, and app name is like, let's say, value is like, let's say, so something like demo, okay, whatever it is. So push this much, and kubectl delete -y git space pull kubectl apply -f 10.yml. So deleting them, pulling the latest code, and run it once again. So still it fails. Okay. So the reason now, okay. So from here also, from K9s also, you can get the logs just by pressing L character, on the highlighted pod. If you press L character, so you will get this. So now another variable which is missing is project name. Okay. So name. So until you provide all the values, it fails. Rather than failing it every time, so we'll just go and give the values now. The value is project name is also something like demo. Okay, so just some dummy values, doesn't really matter. It all requires is some variables. Okay, now what are the variables it does require? I just configured here .sh. So these are all the variables are needed for that particular application to run. Okay, I just intentionally put some values. Okay, so let me go and configure one by one. So the name, this one, and name this one, 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 name this one. So the value is something like, so I'll just put Dave. So here one more is there. So the value is going to be AWS. Okay, so and value is going to be some USA, and okay, value is going to be yes. Is VPC? Yes, it is under VPC, something like that. True, probably double quotes, and a component, and then value is gonna be component. The value is gonna be component. So which is HTTPD, and the software. The value is it's gonna be Apache, and the software release version. So which is value is actually going to be 2.4, Apache version 2.4, and finally the app value version is, let's say, 1.0. Okay, like this, so many values I have, and the so many values I do require for another pod as well. Okay, that's a quite important thing you need to understand. And the same values I require for another value, another pod. You require a lot many pods need this particular data. This is a project level data kind of thing. A lot of pod needs this information. Now tomorrow I want to change my app version to 2.0, so that means I have to change here, I have to change here. So I declared in n places, I have to go and manually update in n number of places. So which is ideally not a good case. Okay, which is ideally not a good use case, right? So this is the problem statement. So ideally I cannot, if I tomorrow I'm changing something like, so like let's say, so software version has been upgraded. So tomorrow 2.5 came, I upgraded to 2.5. So something I had to update that particular parameter as 2.5. Okay, so environment changed. Okay, so tomorrow it is something like, so test or prod or something you're keeping. So whatever it is, doesn't really matter. Assume that it actually goes with okay, so changing the values in one place, it should get replicated everywhere. So that's what you have to do. So change the variable in one place, and that should be affected in everywhere. Now in this scenario, what's going to happen? The pods now both will run. So but tomorrow I want to change the version. So then what I'm going to do is I have to update this particular manually. Then I have to apply that. Okay, I have to apply that. So now both the pods will go to running. I think those will not go to error. Okay, because all the variables are being given. But the problem statement you have here is that is the same thing which we talked about already. So what is the problem there? So let's make some notes. So the problem with above scenario is if the data changes, in variables, we have to update in all the places, okay, manually. So instead we would like to read from a central place, central place. Okay, so central place where Kubernetes holds the data is config map. Okay, so the name itself is telling it's a map. Map is nothing but a lot of values. Okay, key values you'll be finding out there, and you keep this particular data there, and you just read from there. That's it, as simple as that. Okay, so I would be taking the same thing now. I will go and keep it here. Now all these values you're going to bring it from a config map. So you're going to write a config map first. Okay, so let's go with config map in Kubernetes. Okay, so either you can keep some property file, something like that, and you can do that, or else you can directly write a YAML file also. So something like this. Okay, so let's go and write it manually. It's okay. It's pretty simple only. So the API version is v1 and the kind is config map. And so again, the metadata, the config map name is, I want to keep like, so project info, something like that. Okay. And the spec is no, not spec this one. This is actually a data. You're actually writing the data. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to put all the data here. So app version 1.0 and the software version. So 2.4. Okay. And the software is Apache, and the component is HTTPD, and is VPC true, and region, say then cloud AWS, and cloud is AWS, and environment is, and project underscore name, something like demo, and finally app underscore name is also demo. Now this is the centralized data. Now if you are actually using the centralized config map data, then so if you are using centralized data now, so then what's going to happen is whenever you are actually changing in the central place, okay, and your pod can just get those particular changes, and it will run accordingly. Okay, now let me show you that. Now here app name. Now here it's app name, right? So what you are going to do is, previously you're hard coding the value. Now you're not going to hard code the value. You're actually going for value from. You're going for value from. So value from what actually you're taking, config map key reference. You're actually taking the value from config map key reference. And what is a key? It's actually app name, right? I'm going to put app name. And the name of that particular, the name of that particular one is project-info. So from this particular config map, okay, refer a key app name, and whatever the data is there, you put that particular value. This is what you have told. Okay, so the same thing here, and the same thing here, the same thing here, the same thing here, the same thing here, and the same thing here, same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. But we will override. So this is a project name, so refer for project name. Okay, this is an environment, refer for environment. So this is a cloud, refer for cloud. So this is a region, refer for region. Okay, this is VPC, refer for VPC. Okay, this is a component, so refer for component. Okay, so it's a software, refer for software. Okay, so it's a software version, refer for software version. It's an app version. Go for app version. That's it. So this is how you're going to give the values now, and all those particular values you're going to get it. So for an example, just for so just to understand, so 1.0.1 and 2.4.100, some changes I made it. Okay, so now push this particular one, and let's run it once again.
There's one small doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this keywords are case sensitive, right?
Keywords are case sensitive. No. Keywords which come from Kubernetes are case sensitive.
Okay, so
But
that's
these
what
are
I'm
your
asking.
value.
Yeah, that's okay, fine. In the below YAML description, like config map, we have taken config map key reference.
Mm-hmm.
So that is case sensitive, right? We should not change the character.
Yeah, you cannot actually, because that's
So
a
how
key
to?
actually defined from Kubernetes. Yeah.
Okay, so like this, there would be like many keywords. So how to remember this particular syntax? Any way to easily remember? Like every
Documentation all the time. Documentation only is the only approach.
okay.
Yeah, you cannot remember all these things. And let's
Yes,
say
yes,
if you are using some editor like whatever I'm using, right? So
yeah.
if it is a paid tool, then it autofills the things. Okay, at
Okay,
least yeah. So I asked you to install IntelliJ. The IntelliJ free edition doesn't have the feature of autofilling the code. So we tested
okay.
with so some student actually, one of the students. So it's not working. Okay, so it has to be a paid. It's available only in the paid version. So one thing, referring the documentation or some IDEA tools will help you, and the tool is a paid one, by the way. Yeah, that's how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, it
So
is
now,
we can. Hi, sir.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
we can use 1 month, sir, unlimited edition.
yeah. One month if you use Ultimate, yes, of course you get that. Yeah, but 1 month only, right? So that's what. But after that,
Yeah.
it will not work again. If you reinstall also, it will not work. So they will do some. They will go with some your hardware related information. They'll store that information. So if you retry, installing this, it will not work. So 30-day, you can go with this and you can get that. Yeah, right.
I think these 30 days it will be finished now.
Yeah. So, but rather than that, it's a good practice to start with reading the documentation, and whenever is needed, just go there and read it. So now let's say if I come back here, so what they're telling is these are all the different ways of creating the config maps they're telling. And finally, once you come to the referring that particular config map, so then just come to, it's all creation of the config map, all different approach. Now finally, define container environment variables using config map data. You come here, they're telling config map key reference and name this one, so this is how you do that. So yeah, but ours is a failure. So what is the reason for the failure is in line number 10.yml config map me1 cannot be handled. There is something I'm missing, like I think true here. So I should be keeping in double quotes, booleans. All right. Yeah. So now this particular pod is getting this pod is created. Now you can just go and give so if I want to go to the shell, if I go to the shell, okay, so then env, so you will see that particular information. So you see the app version is 1.0.1. so in tomorrow, okay, so if tomorrow actually if I want to update the data, I'll change it in one place and every pod will get affected, so whichever is using it. So here also you can come down and take this environment variable and just go with this. Okay, so now the pod 2 also can do the job. Pod 2 also will have the same values. So like this project will have, okay, a lot of pods, lot of services, and all those services require some common information. And if something is modified, okay, so everything should get affected. Okay, so rather than you go and modify it in each and every place. Okay, so you change in one place, and that should be available for everyone to change, adopt that particular change. So that's where this config map comes into picture. Does it make sense? Any questions on this?
Actually, just to the value, Raghu, how it's taking the value. Like we have defined that project info, right? From there, it's taking the values, right? For all the
Right.
keys.
Yeah. Any questions?
Raghu, can we create this config ML file outside of this main ML file?
Yeah. It's ideally you're writing in single file, but ideally those are 3 different files. That's how YAML works. You've broken into three parts by using 3 hyphens. Yeah.
Oh.
It's ideally 3 pieces. Yeah.
In case if it is in different files, how to relate those files to go? Like if you are keeping different files.
Run multiple files. So kubectl apply -f. So file 1 and -f file 2, or run one by one. It's up to you how do you do that.
Okay.
Or a directory. So directory you have all the files. Run directory. It's also fine. Yeah. Now here we have a problem. Okay. So we have few variables, and those variables that so and calling and calling those variables is making your pod spec too lengthy. So your pod spec, it's actually making your pod spec too lengthy, right? So you see these much lines you are making, and sometimes these times okay, in some scenarios it goes hundreds of lines. I can show you that. Okay, so practically from one of the project. So when we make it, so so if I literally show you the variables, what is that? If I go to here, Google cd, you have config cd Kubernetes. Where was those files? I think it is in. It's all Helm charts. Let me just try to Jenkins share library. No. Config. Yeah, here it is. So here I'll be having so the config maps, and you'll be having environment related variables. So this is S1 is a dev environment, P1 is a production environment. Okay. Now if I just go with s1.yml, you see these many values are there. And if I go for, and I mean this is very specific to the environment. This is specific to this environment. So this is a config map declaration, and those are not enough actually. I require a lot of services. So these many variables. Okay. And so some global configuration values are there, so which is irrespective of something. You have another config map, and so something about a fluent bit, so we have one more config map. So this is what it is. So you see this, so many values, so many. Okay. So yeah, so usually will be having a huge number of variables. If it is at least a microservice world, you will see a lot of variables. So since there will be a lot of variables, so you require some central place where you can so call them basically. Okay, you change in one place, everything should be getting affected. Okay, that's a quite important so need basically. And again, when you have so many values here, so we have a problem that you have few variables and calling those is causing a pod spec too lengthy. Assume we have so 50 plus variables. Assume you have 50 plus variables, then the code becomes too complex. Okay, so there are alternate ways of accessing config map. Okay, so what are those? Let's try to look into that. You can access the same thing, okay, so but in a little different way. We're going to have the same that one, but I'll just this much is fine. And how are you going to do that is so it's gonna be by using it's not actually env. We're not going to use env, and we're going to use env from directly. We're going to use env from, and which environment I want to use is I'm going to use config map reference, and so config map reference, and the name of the config map is project-info, right? If I'm not wrong, project-info. That's it. Now all the variables inside this is going to come to this particular container. That's it. Okay, all the variables which is inside this is going to come to that particular one. Okay, now let's go back here and go and view this. There is something wrong. Env from config map reference. It's okay. Let it delete. Yeah. Now the pod got created and it came to running, and all the variables will be available there itself. Okay. If I go to the shell and if I give env, all the variables, app version, okay, component, right, and you see the cloud, environment, region, okay, so prod name, all these variables comes out of box. Okay, in a single shot you are going to get it. So which is a quite easier way of doing this, right? Quite easier way of doing this. Now the important thing you have to keep in mind is, so important things to keep in mind while using above is, so so your variable names, okay, which container is expecting, and so the same key should be used in config map. Now let's say so my container is actually having some value. So container is actually expecting like let's say environment as a capital environment. Now let's say in your config map you are giving small environment. It doesn't make sense, right? So it has to be identically same. Now if you have small character here, so then again you have to fall back in this scenario. So if you fall back in this scenario, so what you're going to do, you're going to give to the container as capital environment or something like that, and whereas to the key reference you're going to call it as small environment. Okay, so just to avoid this, the quite important thing here you need to keep in mind when you use that particular env from is your variable names which container is expecting, the same key should be used in the config map. That's a quite important thing. Okay, so secondly, so if I talk about some cons here, okay, all the data and irrespective of whether a pod needs it or not, you give all the information. So I mean, what is the problem here is on the security perspective, people can consider this as not a good approach. Why? Because irrespective of whether the pod need it or not, you are giving all the data. You're giving all the so values to that. So sometimes, so that can cause a breaches as well. Okay, you're actually exposing some unwanted information. So some people will not like it, some people will like it. It all depends upon understand. Okay, so if your security is a major concern, then don't go with that. Okay, so just think about that and use it, or cut your config maps into small pieces, as simple as that, rather than keeping everything in single place. Okay, so to avoid a problem, to avoid above issue, okay, cut the config maps in small pieces where it makes logically all the data is needed. Okay, you can cut it into pieces and you can use that particular config map only, and you give that information only. Okay, that way you're safe. Still you can use this approach, but you can do that. Okay, so the pros is makes your life easy, as simple as that. Okay, very straightforward point is makes your life easy. All right, and that's all on the config map. So there is something called as config map mount also, which we'll talk about that in the volume section, not at this point of time. But before to that, any questions here? Cool. And the next thing which you have is sometimes you're going to keep some secret information. Sometimes you're going to keep some secret information. So now let's say you're having a key colon value, but that key colon value, so sometimes it's going to be a value, is going to be a password, and that particular password we cannot actually keep it on the plain text. So that fundamentally is not a good approach in security perspective, right? So that is where Kubernetes have something called as secrets, and we're just going to use the secret piece. And secret is as simple as config map. Okay, but it just goes on a encoded data. Okay, plain text, you will not see that, but end of the day it actually goes as a plain text, but you will not see that as a plain text. And you can also decode that also. Okay, but still on the user level, if you just try while you're managing the user level access, you can control that secrets cannot be accessed by certain users. Okay, whereas config map can be open. Okay, so that way you're secure. Okay, only on that particular perspective it is secure. Otherwise, config map and secret is as simple as that. And all the scenarios what we talked about around the config map is same as it is applicable to the secrets as well. Okay, let's go with the secret. Now API version is v1. Now kind goes as a secret, and metadata goes as name is so my secret something. Okay, and now here also data, nothing more than that. So okay, let's say db underscore password is something like db password is abcd1234, but you cannot actually hard code this data directly. What you can do is you can just cut this, or basically you can go to the command line and you give echo and hyphen and no new line ending. So echo by default ends with new line, but you should not end with new line. Echo hyphen n pipe base 64. So now you can see this, it is giving one encoded format. It's just encoding, it's not encrypting. Encoded, it's always can be decoded. Encrypting is something different. It comes with the keys. Okay, you encrypt without a key, you cannot actually decrypt. Okay, now you have a DB password. Now I'll go into accessing that particular one. So which is API version is a v1, and the kind is gonna be a pod. Okay, and then metadata name is actually going to be pod-secret, Okay, so something like, so spec you go for name, just go for CentOS, and image is going to be CentOS:7, and command is actually going to be sleep 10,000. Now you're going to give the environment now. So environment, you can give it is as -name, so which is going to be so db underscore, so, or let's say I go for password as value from, okay, so secret key reference. Now previously config map reference, now secret key reference, and the name and the key is actually going to be is db underscore password, and key is db underscore password, and the key is db underscore password, and so value, name is actually going to be is my secrets. Either you can use this, or you can go for env from directly, like, so secret key reference, and the name is my secrets. Either of the way you can do that. Okay, so let's go and run this and see this. Okay, so here kubectl apply -f open.yml. So you just created one secret. Now you go to the pod secret and you go to the shell. Inside that, just give env. So now you can see the db password is abcd1234. Our password is equal to abcd1234. So both the things is possible, right? You just given both the ways. Password as a separate variable you are putting it to, and calling the same value. And actually you're just giving environment from, like, however you have done to the container. This is also done. Okay, so this is how.
Yeah, this part is not clear to me, Raghu. Like, can you come again on this part? Like secrets, when we have defined it, how are we taking the values here in the secrets file? We have defined in the data db password and the keys we have defined here. But like means how we are passing the value, like how it's taking the values here, like what all the variables we have defined, like say db password and the other variables here, which you have shown on the screen, right? Once you apply those.
You're using a reference, right? You're using the reference.
Yeah. So
and hence you're using a reference, and it is able to. Since the secret is there, my secrets you're telling, my secret is there, and you're saying that db password is the value. db password, yes, it is bringing this particular value and updating it.
okay, and earlier, like when we have defined that in that config map, we have defined initially we have defined different variables, different config maps. Then we then we only had placed once, and we had created separate file or a Docker file, like where it can take initially like all the values at one go, like that part, like 10.yml, right? That file what we had created earlier. There only once you have defined that. All the only one time there, instead of defining it multiple times, like how it's taking there that part 10.yml part there.
It is also the same thing. You're using a reference, but you're using a config map reference.
Okay,
You're saying I want data from config map, it is pulling from config map. If it is there, it runs. If it is not there, it fails.
okay, actually can you scroll a bit downwards, like just we have defined data, yeah, just one time if you can show me. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, Okay, got it. Fine.
Anyone? Any other questions?
Yes, Raghu. So how it is getting decoded?
This is the mechanism, right? It is how it is just decodes. You keep it in base 64. That's a contract, right? So I keep it in base 64 and system uses base 64 decoding. That's it. And how do you decode is you take the same code. Okay, you ask the base 64 itself to decode it, and it gets decoded. Okay, so you echo again, echo this one, and you say that base 64. Hey, can you decode me this? Since it is a base 64 encoded, it can decode that. So Kubernetes uses a decode mechanism.
Okay, so by default, Kubernetes is using base 64.
It uses base 64 only, not by default. It is the one. Okay, you don't have alternatives.
Okay, okay.
So the only reason is pretty simple. Config map, you can plainly store the username and password, that anyone can see that. Okay, so but if you keep a secret, later the user management comes into picture, and you can give a privilege only to the config map if you want to provide. Okay, or you provide a minimum read-only access, so then he get the config map access, but he never get a secret access. So that's how the cluster goes into little secure. Okay, so that's the only reason. So this is not a 100% secure solution. It's just only like so just masking it. That's not really doing something technically there. Yeah, it's only like security perspective. They're just doing this masking. But later we come into a little bit more standardization, like I already told you in the syllabus itself, right? So we are going to use some AWS services for this particular course, and out of this we're going to use AWS Secret Manager. So where you are going to go with the complete secret management. Okay, so in a secure way. That's how we make that. Right? Clear? Any questions? Okay. And the next thing, so here your secrets you're going to have is there are different types of secrets. Okay, let's go with the secrets now. So secrets, Kubernetes. If you go there, you have different types of secrets again, and the type of secret you are using is opaque. Okay, so the type of secret by default you are creating or you are using is opaque. Or if you go to the command line and you go to the so colon, and you just say that I want to go with secrets, and by default my secrets is actually going to be a opaque. Okay, so opaque is an English word, right? So you don't need to confuse again. So meaning once again, okay, if you put that, and what it is telling is not transparent, or to be saying exact meaning. Okay, so as I mentioned, like so not transparent. That's it, as simple as that. Okay, so here also you can see this. You cannot see through it. Just by seeing it, you cannot see through that particular password, kind of thing, right? So yeah, that's it. It's not a plain text. Just understand that way. It's not straight. Okay, so you have seen this particular one. Now, whereas if you'll be having some scenarios. Now, let's say so sometimes your images needs to get authenticated, and then only the pooling will work. Like let's say if you use some Nexus as a tool, and if you try to install Nexus and you have a repository, and that repository is a private registry, and that particular repository is a private registry, and which requires a username and password, okay, in that particular case, okay, I need to create one secret, so which I'm going to say that it is it's a Docker credentials. We're going to write some Docker credentials, and that particular credentials will be used by your Kubernetes to authenticate to Nexus and get the image. Okay, so and how do you do that is So something is called as, if you just go down, is all documentation. You can go ahead and read it. Come down. Volumes, you will see that. Okay, we'll come to the volumes part later. And this immutable. Okay, so there is a tag here, immutable. Immutable is true. So then what is actually, this is actually a new feature, it seems. Okay, I didn't see in this. So if you say immutable, the Kubernetes beta feature immutable secrets, if you say immutable or immutable, that means you cannot modify them. Once you create them, you cannot modify them. Okay, now you can go to this particular config map and just say that edit it. Okay, and I can go on add one more value, YYP, and I will just say that it's, let's say pass is just the same value, and I can do this addition, and then I did some modification. Okay, let's say if I delete this now. Okay, so before do that, if I say immutable is option true, right? So that means what's happened, you cannot modify it since. Let's give it a try. I'm also not quite sure. Give me 1 minute. Yeah, sorry. So now if I go and try to, so if I try to go and edit this, now if I just go and say that YYP something, just save and quit, this is also modifying, then what is the immutability is actually bringing? Okay, so need to read through this. And config map provides an option to set individual secrets as immutable. So for clusters that are extensively used secrets, preventing changes to the data. Okay, preventing the changes to the data. Okay, but not to the addition of the values. Okay, makes sense. Let's try that also. Okay, so what they're telling is echo -n, let's say password is password or something. So base 64, and you just take this here and go and now try to update the data. So if I just go and say that previously it is something, now if I go and try to update this should not get updated is what they're telling. That's also getting edited. That's also getting modified. I don't know. Immutability came, immutable, but immutable option I didn't see here immutable. That's the reason. Immutable is true. Okay, need to see. Okay, I'm also not quite sure. Interesting option. I'll take a look. It's good actually if we have that. So someone will never modify it manually. Okay, I'll take a look on this and I'll let you know tomorrow. And the next thing, image pool secret. So this is where we're talking about the image pool secret. So now the another type of secret which we want to make here is image pull secret. Okay, so I will go and say that, you know, I'll configure my Docker credentials here, my username and password, and so image pull secret. They didn't mention anything here. Account. Yeah, this is the one. But this is the pod as such case. Literal. So they removed that particular to some other section, but they just gave a hyperlink, you know, so you can find out, you know, learn how to specify the image, this one in containers image documentation. If you go there, this is how you're going to do that. kubectl create Docker registry, okay, and the name of the Docker registry and the Docker server, and you're going to give the Docker username and the Docker password, okay, and the email as well. And so that you can, you know, it creates one credential, and while you're pulling the image, you're going to say that, okay, so image pull secret is this one. Okay, we can also do that with Docker Hub also. Okay, so let's try to go and make an image, which is hub.docker.com, and I think they provide only one private repository, if I'm not wrong. Create a repository, and I would say that, you know, so which is you know, so which is private demo. Okay, I would configure this as a private repository. I cannot create. Okay, so why? Because I think they provide only one private repository, which I already have, might be. Yeah, you're using 02, using 0 of one private repository.
No, I think you have to do the name on the top.
Yeah, might be correct. So then I don't have the private repository. Yeah, thank you. So just go with this. Yeah, now you got a private repository. This is a private one, right? So what you can do is you can just tag to any of your repository to this private-demo. I can just go for Docker, so Docker images. So sudo docker tag, I can use this :v1, and I would like to give private-demo : let's say v1. Tag spelling wrong. Yeah. Now if I say that, just push this docker push to this sudo. All right, so it's been pushed, right? So now docker sudo docker rmi -f, even though they are using. So I just want to clean up this :v1 so that it will not use my local one. All right, I cleaned it up. So now I want to go with pulling an image, and that particular image will fail now. Okay, let's go and see this. I'll just go with new file, and I'm going to say that 12.yml. So just go for API version is v1 and kind is pod. Spec is not spec, it's metadata. So metadata name is always something also pod private, something like that. And spec containers name CentOS and image is actually going to be slash private hyphen demo colon v1 if I'm not wrong. Private hyphen demo v1. Yeah, so that's it. And okay, let's run this. Okay, so kubectl apply hyphen f for.yml. On the top, you can see the pod is actually getting created, container creating, but error image pull. You're getting an error, error image pull. Okay, so if you see that, and if you just go into describe, okay, how do you get the describe is here itself? You can get the describe, or else kubectl describe and the pod name, and just give describe, and you go with the ending. So what it is telling is fail to pull the image. Fail to pull the image. Okay, so yeah. Or no pull access does not exist, or no pull access, anything is okay, anything is chancing. So we just need to sort it out. Okay, how do I sort it out is let's go and try to create a secret. How do you create that particular secret now? So here you have the command, so you can just go with this. Okay, now kubectl create secret and a docker hyphen registry, so which is I will say docker hyphen hub, any name. Okay, and docker server, you don't give that because it's a by default docker hub. You can go for docker username is equal to kaluru, and you can go for docker password is equal to devops321. Okay, and so my docker email is whatever you want to give, so is equal to gmail.com. So this is also optional, but it expects some value. Okay, so just give this. Now the secret is created, and you just go to the top and give secrets, and you can see that the Docker Hub secret is created, but it's actually telling you there is something called as Docker config JSON. Okay, it's actually Docker config JSON. You just created that. Now since you created these, then what you're going to do is you can go with pulling that particular image. Now image pull, not pull secrets. How do I do that? Image pull secrets. Image pull secrets. So some image pull secrets will not be available on the container level. It's actually on the pod level. So that means at the container level, I have to go with image pull secrets, and the secret is Docker hub. You can give multiple as well, not only one. You can go for multiple. Okay, and it's actually going to be a name. Okay, so name is Docker. All right, push this. Go for pods. Git space pull. Okay, now on the top you can see that the container is getting created. So there is an error. So the error is basically you are not able to find out the variables. That's fine, but it's actually able to pull the image. That's quite an understanding we have to make, okay, which is fine, not an issue. So this is how, okay, there's another type of secret which is called as or which is used for Docker config JSON is another type of secret. Opaque is one. This is another one, and okay, so you're getting into that. Okay. So there is another type of thing which is also there, which is called as token. Okay, so the next one goes as token. Okay, so what is a token and all? So probably we can take in tomorrow's session. So yeah, that's all for today. Any questions? So tomorrow tokens followed with volumes, and something which we left over is what we left over. We thought of volumes. Yeah, config map volume and secret map volume also as a part of volume. We'll try to cover that. Yeah. Any questions?
Actually, this part of pods authentication private registry, is it something different? Like we created a private repo and then created a Docker image again. Is it something different, like from the secrets from for private registry, like third topic and secrets?
Yeah. So secret, you created a secret for private registry. So you created one secret.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you are using pod authenticating private registry. So that is when using this option.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Anyone? Any other questions? Okay, all right. No questions. We'll meet in tomorrow's session and continue. Okay, thank you and see you tomorrow. Bye. Good day. Good day.